So you were born in Mount Vernon,
Yep.
right?
Knox County.
And you graduated in '65 from Mount Vernon
Yes.
High School.
Yes.
And then you came to Newark in '83. What brought you to Licking County?
I worked for Columbia Gas of Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did they transfer you down here? Or?
Yeah, I took a job down here right across the street over there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. On Main Street with Columbia as a serviceman. And I like that because you're on your own. And I started out as being a meter reader at Mount Vernon.
Okay.
And there was nobody retiring, so they weren't filling positions. So I got stuck reading meters for 7 years, which was good because I'm by myself, and I like that. So then I got, they had a promotion for a service guy in Licking County, and I put in for it and got it, and was down here, I think 12, 14 years as a serviceman.
Okay.
Then I went to Columbus, Ohio as a training specialist because I did training in the military too.
Okay.
So, and I like training, working with people. And then I went to Virginia as a training specialist. Worked hard down there, plus in the Guard.
Oh, okay.
So I was working, I was on the road 3 days a week, which I like being by myself.
Okay.
That's part, well, you'll hear that a lot
Right.
with Vietnam veteran guys.
Right.
And then I got a supervisor's position in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Of course, not very, it's funny how hindsight, I wished I'd have paid more attention to history in school.
Right.
But man, I really got into it down there with the battlefields in Fredericksburg. That was my area of operation there. Then I came back to Newark as a supervisor.
Okay.
So I was in and out of Newark several different times.
So were you in the? You said you were in the Guard in Virginia. Had you been in the Guard?
I was in the Guard in Ohio too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many years did you have in the Guard?
24.
Okay.
Yeah. And 3 years active duty in the Marine Corps.
Okay. So did you enlist then in '66, or were you drafted?
No,
or?
I enlisted.
Okay.
I don't know how it was in Licking County. Wasn't that really familiar with Licking County at the time. But a lot of the friends of mine were coming back in body bags that were in the Army because they cut their training.
Oh.
Yeah, they cut a week and a half of training. Well, friends of mine that were in the Marine Corps, and one of the guys I talked to was Denny Kennard.
Okay.
I knew Denny real well because we ran track together.
Okay.
So I was really surprised to see him.
Yeah.
And but we ran track together, and he was older than I was, but still, you communicate with those guys. And so I made a decision. I'm going into the Corps, and so I enlisted, went to the post office in Mount Vernon, and enlisted in the Marine Corps. I think I was just graduated in '65. I was 17. And then I went in October of '66, so I think I was, still 17, and then in June I turned 18. So, but when I went in, because I got my draft papers not long after I signed up the Corps, and I took it down to the Marine Corps recruiter, and he just ripped them up. I'll take care of that.
So you'd have gone either way. I mean,
yeah.
So
Yeah. But the Marine Corps, I had 8 weeks of boot camp at Parris Island.
So you chose the Marines really because you knew you were going to be trained well.
Yes, yeah. And I was an athlete. I played football and ran track.
Okay.
So the PT stuff didn't bother me that bad.
Right.
But so anyway, but it was good. Then I went to Camp Lejeune for they called it at that time ITR, and I don't know what they call it today, but it was individual infantry training.
Okay.
The training regiment. And then from there I went to Schools Battalion at Camp Pendleton because I was a diesel mechanic.
Okay.
And then when I got to there, then I went to Staging Battalion at Camp Pendleton. And then from there I went to Nam. I ended up in Da Nang.
Okay.
And I was at the 1st FSR. Well,
what's FS?
It's a heavy maintenance company. And then I did. Well, a friend of mine that I went through staging with come through our compound and he got hit. He was, and I don't know if you've heard about the Walking Dead for the 9th Marines. Okay, he was in the 9th Marines.
Okay.
So we sit there and chatted for quite a while, and so I went up to my commander the next day or so and said, "Hey, I'd like to volunteer to go in the infantry, because I had my primary MOS is 0311, and my secondary MOS, which I worked, was a multi-fuel mechanic." He said, "You're in a critical MOS, son. You can't go anywhere." So the best I can do is they put me on a reinforced reactionary platoon, which was fun. I enjoyed that, and we did. And I don't remember a lot.
Right.
I've gone to counseling because I get antsy because I can't remember something, and I'll hear something, and I'll think, "Man, that sounds familiar," but I don't know.
Right.
And a lot of my counselors that I've talked to over the years says, the mind's a funny thing, and it's blocked. That's a lot of that out, and so maybe that's the best thing.
Right.
I say, well, that's probably true, or you think that, but
right.
You still want to know.
Yeah.
And I went to I was a director of the Veteran Service Office in Knox County.
Okay.
After I got out, after I retired from Columbia Gas and everything, and got out, and I've been trying to contact 2 guys I was with in Vietnam, and of course we all had names for each other, like one of them, his name was Mario Montemare. He was from Dallas, Texas. We called him Poncho.
Right.
And then one guy's name was Robert L. Ailey Jr., and he's from Strawberry Plains, Tennessee, and we called him Clem. Well, they extended in country so that they could get an early out.
Okay.
I didn't do that because I still had time on my enlistment. I think they were 2-year Marines. But anyway, so you'd lose track of those guys. I mean, we were together all the time. There was actually 4 of us. One guy's name was General Pierce, and he was from Pennsylvania. We've never found him. We don't know what happened to him. But Clem and I kept trying to call him because I knew him and Poncho extended. And I kept trying to call the number that I had, and they said that he was no longer here. Well, I took that he got killed because I knew he went to a different place after he got back. Because I was still in country when he got there, but he didn't come back to where we were at.
Okay.
And we were on the reactionary platoon together, all 3 of us, or all 4 of us. So I just let it go for a long, long time. Always harboring, thinking about it. Then one day, we happened to have some friends, Bev and Fred Cherubini, in town here. They were going to Lake Cumberland, and they said, they called us up and said, "Hey, you guys want to go?" Another couple that we had can't go, so if you guys don't have any plans, why don't you go? I said, "Chance." I said, "Well, yeah, let's go." So we go down there, and it was almost like fate. We're standing, I can still see it today. You walk in the back door and there's a washer and a dryer sitting there. And there was a phone book. And we're sitting there talking about things, and I'm looking at this phone book, and it says Strawberry Plains, Tennessee. So I thought, while we're talking, I'm looking.
Oh, yeah.
So I flip that open to the A's, and I go down through there, and there's Ailey, Robert L. Ailey Jr. I thought, that's Clem's name. Because I know his last name was Ailey. Right. And then I knew his nickname was Butch. Well, that's what they called him, Butch.
Right.
I called him Clem. And so, communications. So I looked at that and I thought, God, that's got to be him. So I picked up the old cell phone and dialed the number, and this guy answered the phone, and I said, "Clem." He said, "Trent." And that was 20 years.
Wow.
So I'm working at the Veteran Service Office, and he calls me up. He says, "Hey, we're going to have a reunion in Knoxville, Tennessee. You want to come?" He said, "Mario will be there, Poncho." I said, "I'll be there." So I went down. Janet couldn't get off to work. So I said, I'm going. I got to go.
Yeah.
So I went down. I had tears. Everybody hugged and cried.
Yeah.
And they brought out a bunch of pictures. Not Clem, but Mario had a bunch of pictures. And he said, you remember any of this? And I said, I don't remember anything. I was teaching a class on 50 caliber. And he said, you taught classes on the radio. You taught classes on this. And I said, I don't remember any of that. And so I just blocked off a lot of it.
Right.
And so we sat and we talked, and he had pictures. He said we were on 10 operations in and around Da Nang, on the Y Bridge and that kind of thing. And I said, man, I don't remember any of it. The ammo dump, we sat on the ammo dump. See, that got blown up.
Right.
And I heard about it, and I looked it up on my phone, and I talked to a guy that was in the Army or Air Force that was at Da Nang Air Base. When he was telling me about it, I said, I used to set security on that damn hill.
Right.
He said, no, I must have it left today. I said, man. And I remember funny things that happened.
Right.
And one, like Janet, I think Janet relayed this to you. We were on an operation, and this guy was pulling up his M16. I carried a grease gun and a M79, and he was pulling up his M16 to shoot this water buffalo. It was just out grazing in the, and I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm going to shoot that thing. I said, it doesn't have any weapons or anything on it. It's just walking around. I said, that's no different than you going to Mount Vernon, Knox County, and see my dad's tractor sitting out in the field and shooting it. I mean, that's how they do their grain and everything. So I said, that's ridiculous. And so you had those idiots, and just like what I saw on that, what I've been watching on the Vietnam thing so far, you've got those people who have that mentality, and they were probably bad guys anyway.
Right.
That I'm just going to do this and, whatever. So, I don't know. That just really, because I met so many nice Vietnamese people.
Right.
And, they could have been VC at night, who knows. But during the day, when we were talking to her, I struck a conversation up with this one, we always called him Papa Sans. And we sit and talk, and I told him my dad was a farmer, and he asked what kind of crops he grew, and of course they only grew rice. And I said, well, my dad does corn and beans, soybeans. Never heard of it,
Right.
But I said, yeah. I said, we've got a tractor, and we plow up the field just like you guys do. And so we sat and talked and talked and talked. I said, what do you want out of all of this? He said, I want to be able to, and he spoke pretty good English. Of course, the French was there for a long time, and he was older, so I imagine he was into that. But he said, all I want is to have food to feed my family, sell some of the grain, the rice, so I can have a crop for the next year. I said, that's all we ever wanted. That's
exactly.
true. And so I've talked to several different people. We had some mama sons that did our laundry and that kind of stuff, and I was always wanting to find out, hey, what's going on? What do you want?
Right.
Whether what they were, they were, even the barbers. I went to get a hair. Marines were great on haircuts. No matter if you're in a combat zone or not.
Okay.
And so I went up to get a haircut one day, and there was 9 barbers, and 9 barber chairs in there, 9 barbers in there. 2 weeks later, I go up, and we had an offensive going on. 2 weeks later, I go up there, and there's only 2. I said, where's the rest of the barbers? Oh, they all VC. They did.
They just all went.
Yeah.
Joined.
Yeah. So you never knew who was and who
Right.
wasn't. And right outside, first FSR was here, Da Nang Air Base was over here, and we had a road that went around, and over here was Highway 1, and on the other side of Highway 1 was a place called Dog Patch. And we would get sniper fire from there all the time, and they said it was an R&R center for the bad guys. So I don't know whether it was or not. That's
Right.
just what we were told. But we took sniper fire from them. So, but it was fun. I mean, as a young kid, it was interesting and fun.
Right.
Don't remember a lot. I remember funny things, like I told you. We were sitting on the Da Nang ammo dump, and they had S3 had information that it was going to be blown up with satchel chargers, and it was hard to hit with rockets because it was carved out like this, and this was facing the Da Nang Air Base, and so they couldn't get a rocket to come in and go in that way. They'd hit out here
Right.
in the air base a lot. We sit and watched them hit it one night, and but they could get satchel chargers in there. So we had concertina wire all around it, and there were 2 men in each hole, and I had a radio for 77, and so we'd call for flares if we heard something moving around, and heard a bunch of movement in the wire and everything, and so you get down in the hole and you get your radio keyed up, and you call in and you say, I need a flare at the ammo dump at such and such, and they popped up a couple flares. There were these little rock monkeys. They were any bigger than this out there, because you always put sea ration cans, open up a sea ration can, put some pebbles in it, and hang it on the concertina wire.
Okay.
So that way it would rattle. So there was little monkeys out there getting that lid off and getting what we did, getting the food
Right,
out.
they smelled the food.
They smelled the food, yeah. So it was things like that.
Right.
Now, a couple of times, I told Janet one time, I said, my wife loves old cemeteries. Mm-hmm. I said, I don't like old cemeteries. Well, why not? I said, because I sat in one for a whole night, waiting to get shot at. So I don't like them.
Right.
And I don't like crowds. I can't handle crowds. If you talk to my wife about it, I'm always checking out who's around me. Those things were built into you from boot camp. So, but I had, when I was the director of the Veteran Service Office in Knox County, I had I think it was the junior high history teacher call me. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the high school. It could have been the high school. I can't remember now. Then anyway, they were doing the same thing you were doing. They wanted to get, and I had a lot of contacts because of being in the office.
Sure.
And so I told her, yeah, I went out and had a meeting with her, sat down and had a talk. And they were doing the same thing, but they were working on WW2 people.
Right.
To get all of them, as many as they could, interviewed. And then they were going to go to the Korean veterans and get as many as they could. And then she wanted to start on the Vietnam veterans. So I didn't give her a list. And people come in. When I had them come in, I said, here's what they're doing at the high school or the junior high. I can't remember. I think it was the high school. I said, there's a lady out there in the history class, and she wants to interview World War II people, and as many as you can, as many as you can get out there. And so I had several that went out and interviewed with her. So I know they've got a record. Right. And I think that, the way we're losing history anymore, with the statues coming down, and I hate that. That just bugs the crap out of me, because I've made a comment on Facebook, what's next, the Vietnam Veteran Wall?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but anyway, what else you got?
So, you talked about you like to be alone.
Yeah, always have.
Always? I mean, even when you were a kid, or is that just from Nam?
No, just from Nam.
Why? I mean, part of me thinks I might want to be with somebody.
Yeah.
Because somebody's got my back then.
Now I do, if they're military.
Okay.
If they're military, you do. But if they're not military, they don't pay attention to what I pay attention to.
Okay.
They don't look for what I look for. And don't ask me what specifically I look for, but it's anything unusual.
You know it. You would know it if you saw it.
Yes, I would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you go into restaurants and stuff, do you like to
Back
sit with
to the
your
wall.
back to the wall? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so you can see what's going on
coming
around
on.
you.
Janet and I, after we got married I said to her, she'd come up and she says, we're going to go, I want to go to the red, white, and boom. I said, I don't want to go. Why? I said, I just don't want to go. I'm uncomfortable in that situation. Well, we're going. You know how it went.
Yeah.
I said, okay. So we go, and I'm all over the place. I'm looking here and I'm looking there, and it's me and her two kids. We had 7 between us.
Right.
And I said, I'm not liking this at all. She put a blanket down and all this stuff. Something happened. There was a big fight happened over here, and it was moving toward us. So that's where I went, on my perimeter of defense. Right. I had to cover the whole thing because I didn't have anybody else.
Right.
So I kind of got them where I could, and I was facing whatever was coming our way. So the cops got that one, and it was over with. So it wasn't 5 minutes later, here come this guy running through with a purse and a dress on. And I said, pack it up, we're out of here. And she didn't argue with me.
Right.
She left. So I don't, now if I go somewhere with other veterans, now they don't even have to be combat veterans. They just have to be a veteran. Then it's hard to understand, if this is my perimeter and there's 2 of us, then I only have to have that much, half of it. If there's 3 of us, then we only got,
right. You
break it down. So,
and it's an unconscious thing. I mean,
yeah, it is.
It's not something where you go, okay, you're watching this, and you guys just kind of.
If it's me by myself, I'm watching everything. Another perfect example. We have a friend of ours. We have an adopted granddaughter, Casey Kittle. I don't know if you've heard of Kevin Kittle or not. Kevin built houses up here, and he built a house for us. We met Casey when she was about this big. Well, the next phone call we get down in Florida, she's this big. So she come down, and Grandma wanted to go to down in St. Petersburg, the farm market. I said, okay. I'm still, okay.
All right.
So we go down there, and she said, I said, you girls go ahead, I'll be right out here. Because it was crowded, it was a tent, crowded with people. And I said, go on, and I was standing out there like this, and I'm just watching them, got them, looking around, back to them, looking over here, back to them. And Janet was inside with Casey, and she says, look at Grandpa, he's not having a very good time. And so, but I was watching 2 guys, one guy over here, stealing produce. He had his arm in a sling, but It wasn't. It was down here, and under his sweatshirt, and he would take produce and drop it in the bag in the other hand. So I watched that go on, and watched another guy do stupid things. And so Janet come back out, and she said, I'm sorry, honey. She said, you're not having a very good time, are you? I said, oh, yeah, I'm having a blast out here. She says, what do you mean? I said, well, you see that guy over there with that bag? He's filled that up since we've been here, with the other hand that's hidden.
Wow.
So I just don't care for that.
Right. When the red, white, and boom, would the fireworks bother you?
No, actually,
okay,
they don't.
So it was the crowd that the crowd was what was your concern, not the fireworks.
Just the people. Yeah, because you don't know the people.
Right.
And I'm not pointing fingers, but there are a lot of different nationalities, and one thing I can't stand is someone talking in a foreign language looking at me and grinning. I'm going to take his head off, because you never know what they're saying, and that's what happened. That happened a lot in Vietnam. You just don't know what they're talking about. And I got a perfect example of that. Our adopted son, Brian Stow, was in Special Forces. And he was in Iraq first time. In Special Forces, they're the first ones in there. So Brian gets married, and they start having children, and he decided, I can't do Special Forces and raise children. So he gets out of the Army, and he becomes an electrician. He got an apprentice, and then he works into being an electrician. So he's up this job site. He called me on the phone immediately, because he's combat veteran,
right.
And we have a lot of respect.
You could relate.
Yes, we can relate, and I'll tell you another story after that. So he calls me on the phone. He said, "You never guess what's going to happen." Because I've always told him, I always said I can't stand people that talk and I can't understand. Well, Brian had to take 2 or 3 years of Spanish, because that's where his fifth group was, in the Spanish population, speaking people. So he called. He couldn't wait to call me on the phone, and he says, "I'm unloading my truck," and he says, "I always kept my truck the way you kept your gas truck, neat, clean, everything where it was supposed to be, and all this stuff. And I always lock my doors." So I pull up on this job site, and there's these 4 Hispanic guys sitting on the step. They're drywallers. He said I could tell they were drywallers. They had drywall dust all over them,
Right.
mud and stuff. And he said, they're talking, and they said, "You two strike up a conversation with that electrician, because he's got some nice tools, and we'll sneak around the other side and open the sliding door and get his tools out." So Brian, being Brian, sit there and listen to that, taking his time, listen to what they're saying, and then he turns around and speaks to them in Spanish, and he said they just scattered.
Oh my goodness.
He said they scattered like rats. And I said, I'll bet they did,
Yeah.
because they thought they had an easy mark. He said, I was in there running some wire, and the boss come back and says, "Hey, where's my drywallers?" He said, "I'd sit down." He said, "You got a minute?" He said, "Well, yeah." He says, "Here's what happened." He says, "I'll take care of those 4.
Wow.
So, but going back to same thing with Brian and me, the report that we had with each other, because we were both combat. I had an uncle that was in World War II, Uncle Ralph. He had 4 boys, one which didn't go in the military because there was, I don't know what was wrong with Kenny, but something. The other 3 went into the Navy. Uncle Ralph was a highly decorated World War II veteran from Knox County.
Okay.
He got like 1 or 2 Bronze Stars, a Silver Star, 3 Purple Hearts, you know, this kind of deal. So I'm working at the Veterans Office, and Uncle Ralph passes away. So I'm talking, John comes up, that's the oldest son. He had a daughter that was older, but John was the oldest son. And John comes up and he says, I'm up here to see what all my dad had. And I said, "You don't know what your dad had?" He said, "No, he never talked to me about anything." I said, "Well, your dad was highly decorated." I didn't even have to go pull his DD-214.
Right.
I already knew, because Uncle Ralph wouldn't talk to me about anything before I went to Nam. When I come back, he talked my leg off.
Yeah.
So I already knew he robbed a mail train, him and a couple guys, and a money train for Germany or whatever it was. And I told John about it. He said, "I never heard that." I said, "Yeah, Uncle Ralph." I said, "Your dad was in some crap."
Yeah.
He says, "I know he got a Purple Heart." I said, "He's got 3. "Well, I don't know he had 3. I said, "Yeah, he's got 3 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars, and a Silver Star, all for valor, with the V."
Right.
So I never knew that. I said, "Yeah." So I went back to where we kept our files and everything, pulled out a copy of DD-214, went up and made a copy and gave it to him. And he said, "I never knew all this." I said, "Well, John, he just didn't feel that he could talk to you about it." He said, "I don't think he talked to any of those boys about it." I said, "Probably not." I said, "One thing I've really learned working in here is veterans that know that you were in a combat zone and they'll talk." And I saw you had a problem with a woman veteran, or you brought up a picture of a woman veteran on your Facebook. And when I was in Mount Vernon, the toughest ones we had to bring into the office were women. We always set up at the Knox County Fair. They just set up at the Centerburg Old Time Fest.
Yeah.
We have a trailer, and we have the flags, and we have a thing with the boots and the cross and the flak jacket and the helmet and stuff and the rifle. I saw this little lady. She couldn't have been that tall. Maybe she was 5'2".
Right.
Walked by several times, and I always told my staff, if you see a person walk by and they stop and they look at everything, they may be a veteran. If they got a hat on, you know they are.
Right.
But I said, you don't know. So anybody that walked by the second time, we'd go out and talk to them. Well, some of them you run into, well, my husband was a veteran, or, you know, that kind of stuff. Well, this lady walked by, and I had Melissa Wheeler with me. And I said, I'm gonna talk to her. So I go out and I talk to her, and I says, ma'am, I said, were you a veteran? Well, she says, I was in the Army Air Corps. I said, well, you're a veteran. I said, what did you do? She said, and she was older. I flew bombers, fighter planes to Europe. And they lost a lot of women doing that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of women that got killed doing that. And I said, you're as much a veteran as anybody else. She says, nah, I don't need anything. Off she went. You just couldn't get them in there.
No.
And you know, they're now in today's environment, there's more women going, not just from sexual harassment, but combat wounds, because they're over in the hot spots now. But not even back in Vietnam did you hear, very rarely did you hear of sexual harassment or rape or anything like that. You just didn't hear of it then.
Do you think it didn't happen, or just wouldn't report it?
I don't think it was reported. I really don't. I think they felt, well, I know they felt ashamed, but I just think they felt that nothing was going to happen if they did report it, except to them.
Right.
And that, you know, that's sad.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
but now you hear more about it.
Right.
But back in Vietnam, I'll bet you can't find anything.
As far as reports.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you came home, I mean, where did you come back into? Did you come back into San Francisco, or?
Yeah, I'm Treasure Island. But then, see, I went on I come back, I went to Camp Lejeune. Well, I went on leave. And then I went back and went to Camp Lejeune again. I'm on that water list for Camp Lejeune Marines.
Okay.
But then I went on a Marine Corps float for, I think it was 4 months. We went to St. Croix, St. Thomas, Guadalupe. Anytime we ever went anywhere, we always went in groups of people.
Right.
Because they had a lot of people murdered in the military. We were armed. A lot of us were. And then we went to Cuba. Was in Cuba. And then we relieved the guards on Cuba for like a week or 2 weeks so they could get away. We did that going out on the float and coming back. And then the next group went back. They didn't go there first. Well, they went to all the other islands, and they went to Cuba, relieved them, went to a couple other islands, come back through the same way we did. We relieved them. And then I got back from that float, and they wanted me to stay in to be a warrant officer in the Marine Corps. And I says, okay, what happens if once I finish walk school, you'll go back to Vietnam? I said, I don't want any more part of that. None. So I got out.
Wow.
But missed it. Missed the camaraderie of the troops.
Right.
So I think in 1972, because I had 3 and 3, which made 6. So before my 3 years was up, my reserve time, I tried to find a Marine Corps reserve unit, but that was Akron, Canton. Well, I knew I couldn't do that because it's too far away. So a friend of mine talked to me into joining the Guard unit in Mount Vernon. Bad mistake. There was only 2 of us who were Vietnam veterans, and we were treated like, we don't need you in here, you go over there. And I got out of the Marine Corps in E5, and they filed the paperwork through Guard Bureau, and I became an E6, Staff Sergeant.
Okay.
Well, they didn't like that. I said, well, you know what? Those cross rifles are worth another stripe. So they gave it to me. And I was only in there a short time, and I just couldn't deal with the commander, when we went out in the field and did things, I said, this is not how we did things in Vietnam. We're not in Vietnam.
Right.
We're not in no combat zone. I said, well, yeah, but you always train up for that. That's what you train for. And then so Leonard Kuhn was in Mount Vernon. A friend of mine was a postcard. He delivered mail and stuff. And then he was the veteran service officer for a long time. And he joined a unit in Columbus, Don Scott. So we talked to them. I went over and talked to their commander. This commander down in Mount Vernon didn't want to let me go. So I got to know a General Gutzweiler real well, who was way up in the guard, in the high of guards, political as the devil.
Okay.
Yeah. So Gutzweiler got me out of that unit by the back door instead of going right through. He just went over and got my paperwork and said, this guy's going over here. So I ended up over there, and I worked my way up to first sergeant of an attack helicopter company. And then, because I thrive in the military. That's, my wife will say, well, how come I can't get you to do this? But boy, once you put that military hat on, you're this. I said, well, that's because I thrive over here.
Right.
You know. And the same thing with being a boss. When I worked for Columbia Gas and was a boss, she says, I never heard you talk to people like the way you do. Even at the Veteran Service Office, I had to fire somebody. And I said, well, that's what I do.
Right.
But when I'm with you, I'm a different person. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so then I went to Virginia with Columbia Gas, and had to leave my first sergeant position in the CAV unit. And so went to Virginia, was in Troop Command, which is, they go out and evaluate people, the troops, on training. And they liked me because I would tell, and I was like an E8 at that time, I'd go in, I was polite, tactful, and I'd tell the commander, sir, you did that training last week and you had it on your training schedule, you can't do it like that again. And he may be a major, I don't care.
Right.
You're not right, you're not doing it right. Because I don't report to him, I report to somebody else, but I'm tactful and polite.
Right.
And so, next thing I know, I'm standing in a formation, and the State Sergeant Major of Virginia comes up to me, or Command Sergeant Major, he comes up to me and he says, I got a Command Sergeant Major out at the 224th Aviation Battalion, and he's terrible. He's a cannon cocker. I said, well, I'm sorry, sir. Or Sergeant Major, I said, he said, well, you got master crew wings, you know how to deal with warrant officers and captains and lieutenants. I said, yes, I do. And he said, you're my new Sergeant Major out there. I said, okay. So I went out and met the commander, and we talked, and I was Command Sergeant Major of an Aviation Battalion. Wow. So I was very lucky. I was always in the right place at the right time. And a lot of it was, I taught at the Ohio Military Academy. I taught enlisted guys for a while, for I think 2 years,
right.
And that was I liked training. That's why I just took that under my wing. And if you're a trainer, you can be a boss, and if you have somebody that's got a problem, you can say, well, let's take a look at your training,
right?
Because that's the key. The key to your efficiency is your training, and so that's how I came up through. Wow. That's how I ended up.
Did you have trouble when you came home with people? Because you were a Vietnam vet?
Not in Mount Vernon, not in Knox County. I never wore any military and stuff until, I don't know, until I started being the director of the Veteran Service Office. I just didn't do it. I don't know why.
Okay.
But Knox County was a friendly environment. California was not. Any place around a military base was friendly, but you get outside of that base area, go to Charlotte or where's some of the other places I went to? They weren't friendly at all, and so you never advertise. When I come home, we were told we had to wear our uniforms. So a lot of the places that we came in at, they didn't care for us. But when I got home, I was comfortable. But everything I put in a trunk,
right?
And I really never Now, I wore my jungle boots all the time. I liked my jungle boots. They were comfortable. I wished I could find another pair of jungle boots. I probably could at a flea market.
Right.
But, you know, they were just, I wore them all the time, and you get used to wearing them.
Right.
But as far as any other kind of insignias or anything like that, now I'm one that goes around and I'll meet somebody, I'll come up and say, hey, I'm a Marine or I'm in the Army. I say, well, where's your hat? I'm that kind now,
right.
You know, because when I worked at the office down there, everybody knew I was a retired command sergeant major.
Right.
And I even had, just not too long before I left down there, I had 2 Navy SEALs come in. They were retired. And the first thing they said when they come in, and they were both chiefs, was, how you doing, Sergeant Major? I said, and everybody addressed me as that in my office. So I just started putting my hats on and my shirts. And so, but I didn't at first, no.
We've seen, what, three episodes of this Ken Burns thing.
Right.
That's all we've seen. What's your reaction? I mean, do you think they're keeping it pretty neutral? Do you
Yes.
think they're...
I really do, from what I've seen so far.
Right.
Now, I don't know if you ever watched Ken Burns on his Civil War stuff.
Right.
He's great. I really like his direction. I have a good friend, Mark Grassball, from Mount Vernon. He was he's the same age I am, maybe a couple months younger. He lost a son in Afghanistan. So, matter of fact, I might still have that one here. I talked to him. He was an FO, forward observer, in Vietnam. And his son that got killed was an FO in Iraq. He got killed. His other son's a doctor. And what did Mark say? Oh, I'm reading a book on where his son was killed.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing too. Watch the first episode of Vietnam by Ken Burns. Excellent. Did you get to see it? Yes. We should have helped Ho Chi Minh. When he first came to us, we had him. He liked Americans. You know what? And Mark went back to Vietnam. I said I'd never want to go back there. Goosebumps. I said I would never really want to go back there. But you know what? When I can remember to myself, when I flew into country, I thought, this place is beautiful. Now, does it smell? Oh, yeah. Does Guadalupe smell? Yes. St. Croix, St. Thomas? Oh, yeah. They all stink.
Right.
But as beautiful, the water was crystal blue. I thought to myself, and I've said this many times, you know what they should have done? They should have opened up resorts instead of doing what they did. Because now they got all these stupid landmines all over, and kids are still getting hurt today.
Right.
And it would have been a beautiful country.
Well, they kind of, you know, in that video, or DVD set, they kind of brought that up. You know, the guys saying how, and I wondered that.
Yeah,
too, you know.
Beautiful triple canopy sometimes in the forest. And well, Mark got to go back. He had a friend of his that said, "You're going back," and he went back and he said, "It's gorgeous." And he said the people today, it's just like me talking to those. They didn't have any resentment against us. They just wanted us out of there.
Right.
No different than what we got going on here, and we want those people out of here.
Right.
And Mark said the same thing. He said, I went back, and he says, I got hugs. He says, I've got people telling me they were glad to see me, and they didn't know me from Adam.
Right.
So, anyway, so that's what Mark said. And I said we should have helped Ho Chi Minh to start with. We should have. We would have never had Vietnam.
Right.
And I said we'd have had them on our side all along. And yeah, maybe the communists would have won there, but maybe not. You don't know. He was a strong person.
Mm-hmm.
He may have kept them out. He said, I said, what do you think? He said, agree. Interesting that many, and there were so many letters sent to the president through the CIA, he never got them.
Mm-hmm.
That's wrong.
Right. I mean, that was kind of my reaction to the whole thing,
Yeah.
too. You know,
I do not think that Ken Burns is going to show, yeah, you had rogue people out there, just like that idiot wanted to shoot that buffalo.
right.
You had people that just wanted to kill, but they would have probably killed if they were here civilians. They would have probably ended up killing people.
Because back then, sometimes you had a choice, didn't you? You either went to jail or you went to Vietnam if you got in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. So Mark and I talked about the same thing. And so far what I've seen, you know what? You can have 10 commanders, and you're still going to have out of those 10 commanders 2 or 3 idiots. And I think that Lieutenant Calley was an idiot. He didn't have control of his troops.
Right.
And they got away with whatever. Now, here's one thing you got to remember. That friend of mine from the 9th Marines was with a Korean Marine unit, South Korean Marine unit. They worked on a couple operations
South
together.
Korean or South Vietnam?
South Korean troops.
Okay.
They were in country too. We had Australian people in country.
Okay, I knew we had Aussies.
Yeah, there was Koreans there too.
Okay.
So Dave came up to me one day, Dave Davis was his name, and said, well, he come through on in-country R&R. So we got to visit again. And so he said, man, he said, he was a sergeant, I was a corporal. And he was saying, I said, well, how's things going? So I was telling him about I got on the reinforced reactionary platoon, and it's okay, you know, but it's not. He said, you're still helping. Believe me, you're keeping trucks coming to us. We need the trucks with the food and everything. But I said, we got to talking. He says, we were out on operation with South Koreans, Marines. They're Marines too. He said, I'm walking guard duty with my counterpart, and we walk up on this guard, and he's asleep, and he's a Korean. He pulls out his .45 and shoots him. He said, what the hell are you doing? He said, he's sleeping, he's no good to us. So Dave
shot
says,
him to kill him?
Yeah, he killed him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he shot him and killed him. So he said, well, I'll get somebody to drag him out of here. He said, no, leave him right there. He said, next guard won't go to sleep. But so and if you shot at a Korean company going through a village, they burned everything, killed everybody. Animals, everything.
Right.
So a lot of times, some of the crap that was in the papers, a lot of times I don't trust what they say. That could have been a Korean unit going through that village, not an American unit.
Right.
So you don't know for a fact. And here again, we had some idiot commanders over there. So you really don't know unless you talk to an individual that was there. And
on site.
On site.
Yeah.
Did that unit go through there? No, they did not. There was a Korean unit that went through there. That explains it. If they took one shot, whether they killed anybody or wounded anybody, they wiped out the entire village. And they were mean. And Asian people are mean, a lot of them.
I've noticed, reading about, fighting the Japanese
Oh.
and, the Vietnamese, the Koreans, the Chinese. I mean, in Afghanistan, they are a different. They think different than
yes,
we
they
do.
do.
They don't have that European
No.
war thought,
No, they've been battling for years.
Right.
Yeah, they've been battling since before the Bible.
Right.
So, but I had a lot of guys in my office that were World War II and fought Japan, Japanese people. They hate them to the day. There's a lot of World War II guys that will, if they see an Oriental person walk down the street, they'll go clear over here.
Right.
They just can't stand them. So, and a lot of that is the way they were treated by them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What else?
I think you talked. I appreciate you talking to me.
Yeah.
And sharing, because
Yeah.
that's. If we don't get your perspective, because
Right.
you were there, then we're just hearing about this and that.
Yeah.
And we need to know that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So far, do you think? And I know we still got almost another 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks
Yeah.
of this. Do you think this? Because you work with veterans.
Yes.
Do you think, he's showing North Vietnamese veterans talking, and what's your gut right now? Like you say, it's only been 3 episodes.
Right.
Is this going to help the Vietnam veteran, or or do you have a gut yet on how they're going to, do you think it's going to help them? Do you think it's going to hurt them?
I don't think it'll hurt them.
Okay.
No, I really don't. No. Here's my honest to God's opinion. They're doing nothing any different than I would do or you would do if we had somebody come in here who we thought we really liked, and they did. Ho Chi Minh really wanted the United States to help him.
Right.
And then we turned our back. Then we supplied the French with troops. Well, we have a hard time with the French anyway. We beat them twice. we even had to fight them in World War II and decided, boing, well, we got to go help our own people here.
Right.
So, and you also got to remember, if there's 6 of us standing here, and 4 of them are French, and me and another guy are the only Americans, we all look alike until we open our mouths. You can't tell the difference.
Right.
So, and then when we started helping the French with money and that kind of thing, we shot ourselves in the foot. We should have said, get those damn French out of there, and we'll help the Vietnamese. If they have a problem with the communism from China, Ho Chi Minh didn't want anything to do with that. I mean, he looked at it and he studied, but really, I think if we would have been there, he would have said, nope, we're going with this. I really think that.
That's what I've come away with.
Right.
So far with what I've seen in that.
Right. But I don't know how many veterans out there will remember that there are other people in country besides just Americans. Now that, if they start talking about, and I hope if he does, and he does this, and he does talk about the South Koreans taking hits and destroying villages, that may make a lot of people sit back and say, maybe it wasn't our guys.
Right.
Yeah, we've had some bad people, and you have bad people in every damn war you have.
Yep.
And you can't stop that. The people that really get the psychological evaluations of each individual in that unit are your Delta Force, your Army Special Forces, and your SEALs. Marine Corps Force Recon, I'm not too sure about. I don't know if they individually sit down with them and do psychic evaluations, but I know they do that in those other branches.
Right.
And I would assume, you know what assumption does.
Right.
Makes a butt out of you or me.
Yeah.
But I would assume that they do. Because they don't want somebody that's going to go in there and all of a sudden be a maniac killer. They want somebody that's going to go in there that has, I'm not going to shoot at this person because he hasn't shot at me, or he does not have hostages, or different scenarios.
Right.
So I'm hoping that I'm just hoping that Ken Burns does what he has always done.
Right.
In all the Civil War stuff he's ever done. And he's Southern. You can tell the boy's Southern. And he didn't pull any punches about what the South did and what the North did.
Right.
He didn't distinguish between the two.
Right.
So, and I'm almost sure that if it comes up, there'll be something in there about Aussies weren't very nice either, from what I understand. But the South Korean Marines were the worst. So that's what I know.
You don't have to answer this if you don't. Have you had any problems with Agent Orange? Health problems?
Knock on wood.
Anything?
I have not.
Or the water at Camp Legion?
No, knock on wood.
Good.
I have not. No.
Okay.
No. Da Nang, where Da Nang is at?
Right. I brought this from my room.
Yeah, it's right
there.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there. We I was in around Marble Mountain. If you ever get one that's broke down, you see Marble Mountain,
Right.
Monkey Mountain, and this was really my area of operations right around in here. Now that good friend of mine, Clem, went to he went up north somewhere. Hugh maybe.
Okay.
He was up in there and he didn't have any problems either. I don't know where Mario ended up. I had that good friend of mine from the Marine Corps, was Chulai. And it was also broke down into, this is mostly Marines, this is mostly Army, I Corps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I thought they put you Marines mostly
in
up
I
north to
Corps.
DMZ and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate you taking time to come in.
No problem.
Like I say, if we don't get your perspective,
Right.
if we lose that, then it's anybody's ball game as to
Correct.
what they want to tell us and what I'll believe, because I don't know any better.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Yeah.
So,
Well, like I said, I'm the kind of guy that if I'm out there and there's a barber there or somebody there, I'm gonna say if they can speak any kind of English at all, I'm gonna talk to them,
Right.
and I always look them in the eyes because the eyes don't lie,
right.
And that's why I say I was sitting talking to people I know were nighttime raiders, they were VC, but when you're sitting and talking to them and they say, well, you're a farmer. Yeah, I was a farmer. Oh, what kind of, they got interested
Right.
in it. They wanted to know.
You found that common ground.
Yeah. Yeah. And I told them, I'm as honest as the day's long. I say, you know what? I wouldn't like it either. I wouldn't like somebody, and they were talking more about the communists coming down, taking all the rice,
Right.
taking their sons, and all this stuff. And I said, I wouldn't like that either. So they really wanted to fight those guys. But like I said, I really strongly believe we'd have kicked the French out of there and said, or Kennedy would have said, what do you need to help you? We trained some of them. And then we let the French take over.